Well, good morning and welcome to ELEVENSES. I'm Kevin Williams of Survival Schools Rider Training, and this is show number 320. It's Wednesday the 29th of March, and hopefully after all the gremlins on Sunday this show will go okay. So what have I got for you today? Well, some fairly grim news to start. The police chase in Peterlee has ended with a rider dead and a passenger injured. A rider was hit by a crowbar in South Shields during a bike jacking. A dangerous driving and riding happened at a balloon release memorial for a deceased rider, and that ended in a police dispersal order. The EU has U-turned extremely rapidly, actually, on the total ICE ban in a move to allow e-fuels. Plymouth are charging bikes if you park in a pay and display bay. A new distributor has rescued SuperSoco in the UK. KTM are revealing a new middleweight, but it will be built in India. And BMW apparently are reworking their CEO4, that's their electric scooter. They're reworking the powertrain to build a motorcycle. And finally, we'll be looking at an armoured shirt with a AA rating. And eventually we'll be discussing again why e-fuels aren't going to replace petrol and diesel. Despite many people talking them up as if they are a perfect replacement. So settle yourselves down for the next 30 odd minutes. Don't forget this show goes out live on Wednesdays and Sundays at 11, and you should be able to find all the old shows over there on YouTube if you want to, and that will include the show that started on Sunday and didn't finish due to the hitches that I was having with the audio. Hopefully they've now been sorted out and everybody's hearing me fine, but if you do pop over there you'll find I did actually manage to record the show using a different streaming service actually to normal, but I did it on Monday afternoon, so it is over there on YouTube if you want to catch up with what you might have missed on Sunday morning. So right, okay, good morning, CT9009. Yeah, thank you for looking. I'm not sure who you are, but hey, nice to see you anyway. Right, so what have we got for you? Well, first of all, I just want to bring you back up to date, of course, with the next talk event. This is the one I had to hold over from March after I got my unexpected invitation, I should say, down to the Shiny Side Up Rider Safety Interventions. This is now going out on the first Wednesday in April, so that's the 5th, and it's all about pre-performance preparation and getting ready to ride. Now, the idea of this, it's Clive says, okay, good morning Clive, and Kevin's also looked in and says the stream's fine this morning. So the idea of April's event really is to look at the way we can introduce sports psychology into riding, and I'll be looking particularly at how we can use something called pre-performance preparation. Now, if you're struggling to focus on your riding, if you may be bored with a regular commute that you do far too often, or if you're coming home and you're still thinking about working your work during the ride home, then basically you're not head in the game, as it says. And similarly, if you're in a rush to get on the road, drinking your tea and chewing a piece of toast as you cram your helmet on, trying to remember where you left your key, again, you're not ready to ride, and you're far more likely to be caught out by the hazards we experience every time we actually get out there on the bike. So what we need to do to avoid riding on the sort of this autopilot is to do something called a pre-performance routine. Now, this is actually a straightforward mental warm-up, and it helps us shift our focus to the task of riding the bike. And the idea is that we set off on the bike in a positive and focused frame of mind. Now, it's not very difficult to understand this. If you've ever seen a racer on the line who is sort of seems to be in a different world, that is what they are doing. They are getting themselves into their race head, as it were. So Something else I'll also talk about is what's called a psych plan, and this is something we can apply before we ride. But the idea of a psych plan is to actually prepare for any reasonable eventuality. So we run through what could happen in our minds, and then we are far better able to deal with potential emergencies that might occur as we ride rapidly and effectively. So riding a motorcycle really isn't all about technical ability. You'll get a lot of people telling you that in fact, technical ability is the be all and end all of riding, but it isn't. It's our mental abilities that allow us to use those technical skills in the first place. So we have to have both, but mental skills really should take precedence over technical skills once we have an adequate level of ability. So that's where sports psychology comes in, where it can give us a real advantage. So I'll be offering you some simple routines, and it's straight from science, basically, to get your head in the right place before you ride and to get you race face ready to face the world on two wheels. So the link for these is here. It's been held over, so I have one person who talked to me about doing it a couple of weeks or a couple of months ago, so she's booked in, but there are plenty of spare spaces available at the moment. There are not many spaces available, but do remember you can catch up afterwards for 72 hours if you can't do the live stream. So right, okay, excellent. Anything else I wanted to say? The following show will be the Science of Being Seen. That's that full presentation on Science of Being Seen, and that will go out in May. So if you're booking up for the sports psychology talk, why not book up for the Science of Being Seen as well? Right, okay, so Paul's looked in. He says, hadn't had the opportunity to watch the Monday recording yet. Have you covered your visit to Motocap? I was going to do it on Sunday, but as I was having so many gremlins, I'm holding it over, and that will go out on Sunday. That's something I should have mentioned. The first thing, I will remind people at the end of the show, but yes, I'll be talking about the Motocap visit on Sunday. So, right, on with the news today. Well, the bad news is that the first story is another fatal crash involving a motorcycle and a passenger, and this happened after what's been described as a brief police pursuit of a motorcycle that failed to stop for a marked police car. The pillion passenger, one Lee Stevenson, 27, was pronounced dead at the scene of the incident, which happened in Peterlee in County Durham at about 2:30 a.m. on Saturday, and he died sadly despite the efforts of the emergency services at the scene. The rider, who's not yet been named, was seriously injured. He was taken to the James Cook University Hospital in Middlesbrough, where he remains in a critical condition. The Independent Office for Police Conduct has been informed, and an appeal for witnesses to the event has gone out too. Meanwhile, police have issued the photograph of a man that they believe might be connected, or at least was of interest in an incident where a bike theft occurred. Now, this was at 3:50 p.m. on Thursday, February the 2nd, and what happened here was that an 18-year-old was riding a motorcycle in Southfields when he was chased by three unknown males riding two motorcycles, one of which rammed him, knocking him off, and one of the assailants then apparently hit him in the chest with a crowbar, and the three of them stole both his helmet and his motorcycle, and the victim, not surprisingly, suffered bruising and swelling to his chest. Now, the photograph that the police released on Monday this week, it is accompanied by the statement that he was in the area at the time of the incident and could have information which assists the investigation. So that is the rider of interest in that particular incident in South Shields. Now, another incident that the police were involved in was at a balloon release tribute to a 19-year-old rider called Paulie Skidmore. Now, this turned unruly on Sunday. He died following a collision with a van in March the 21st. Videos and photos of the tribute show drivers in cars doing burnouts, motorcyclists pulling wheelies, helmetless and masked, and various people lighting smoke flares. So there were numerous complaints, not surprisingly, from local residents about the antisocial behaviour. A man was actually run over and a policeman was assaulted, as what the police described as completely unacceptable behaviour occurred, which included riding motorcycles in a dangerous and aggressive manner. Now, a man was arrested for the assault. Witnesses to the collision with a pedestrian are being asked to come forward. He was treated for injuries at the scene before being taken on to hospital. The police deployed drones and said they are currently reviewing the footage and they will act against those involved where appropriate. Right, so anything I just wanted to say here? I've also already said, given you the reminder thing, so I won't bother about that. But if you do want to support what I do on these shows, you can always head over to my Ko-fi page, ko-fi.com/survival skills there. URLs scrolling across the bottom of the screen as I speak. If you do buy me a coffee over there, one off will get you a month's access to most of the archive of better biking tips that have been on Facebook over the last nearly 10 years now. So there's more than 800 articles up there. If you become a subscriber on a regular basis, then you get access to even more articles from specialist topics. So do pop over there, have a look. There's plenty of free stuff to read as well if you scroll through. But any cuppa is much appreciated. So, all right, okay. Now, on with the news. So last show I covered the revolt by a number of EU countries over the formal approval of the law from the European Parliament, which would have effectively banned the sale of any new car with a combustion engine from 2035, which includes diesels, petrol engines, but also hybrid models too. Now, Germany apparently threatened to block the law from being rubber stamped. They did that as far back as the middle of last year, in fact. But other countries have also followed suit more recently. And because they then refused to ratify this law, which was put in place last week, it seems that a compromise has actually been reached in what probably is record time for the EU. Germany and the EU both announced on Saturday that new passenger vehicles with internal combustion engines would in fact be allowed to go on sale after the 2035 cut-off, provided they use climate neutral e-fuels only. Now the EU plans to work now on getting these CO2 standards for this new car regulation adopted, quote, as soon as possible. So I'll be coming back to this story at the end of the show because I do think it is important. I know I have talked about it before, but I do think it is important to keep covering it. Oh look, I've got a new donation from Fred Barnes. Thank you very much indeed, Fred. I'm really pleased. Thank you. That's most kind of you and very much appreciated. So right, there we go. New donation on the screen there. New feature from the streaming software actually. Right, okay. From next month, April the 1st, I believe it's not an April the 1st joke, just bad news for motorcyclists really. If you happen to park your bike on a regular basis in a pay and display bay in Plymouth, you are now going to have to pay for parking. Now, Plymouth's traffic orders apparently never accepted motorcycles from parking charges in pay and display bays, but given the difficulty of previously displaying a paper ticket on a bike, the council has actually been turning a blind eye. But with more and more councils, of course, turning towards ticketless parking through apps and phones, where you pay online, there is no longer a reason to exempt motorcycles because you don't need a physical paper ticket anymore. So with effect from 1st of April, as I say, bikers will be required to pay for parking in all pay and display bays and also within ticketless car parks. But there is some good news. No charges will apply when machines are parked in dedicated motorcycle parking bays. Well, at least for now, that is. An electric motorbike distributor that collapsed into administration earlier this month actually, has been rescued by the manufacturer of vehicles that supplies it, in a deal described as a potential game changer for the two-wheeled electric vehicle market. Now, V-Moto UK Distribution posted 2 notices of intention to appoint administrators in just over a week in the second half of February. And they were forced, therefore, to hand over their affairs to an administrator. Now, the firm had been the sole UK importer and distributor of V-Moto motorbikes, but also the SuperSoco electric bikes since 2015. Now, you'll probably remember that SuperSoco actually came to prominence in lockdown when they started supplying nurses and medical professionals with their bikes with a fairly significant discount on. So anyway, they have been rescued. A Newark firm, V-Moto SuperSoco Group, has rescued the business by buying out the old distributor. So the new distributor will sell a new range of vehicles under the SuperSoco name, also with the premium V-Moto branded models. V-Moto Soco Group Managing Director Charles Chen said this is a strategic acquisition that provides V-Moto with direct access to over 50 active dealers in the UK, which is an important EV market for the company, and will allow V-Moto to further expand its presence in the UK with an established management team. Direct sales to the dealers will also allow V-Moto to grow the UK market share with more focused support. Now, if you recall, I have talked about the sales figures for these bikes excuse me, from time to time, and they have actually managed to sneak into the top 10, which is pretty impressive actually for such a small company. They're based in Australia, I believe, so that's good news really. So right, okay, another brand which you're probably wondering where they're made sometimes is KTM. It's become increasingly difficult sometimes to work out where bikes are actually built. You have a nominal country where a brand exists, but the bikes may not be built where you think they are. So the Austrian brand KTM also has production facilities in India. And that's in fact where their smaller displacement models are manufactured, like the 390s, for example. And of course, KTM has also formed a partnership with CF Moto, they're a Chinese motorcycle manufacturer, to produce smaller displacement motorcycles under the KTM brand name for the Chinese market. And although these particular bikes don't get exported to other countries, but the ones from India do, of course, CF Moto does export its own machines, which use KTM-based motors to countries including the UK. So last week, KTM's CEO, Stefan Pierer, he confirmed the new range of 650 to 690 bikes are going to be based around a brand new parallel twin engine, which will be manufactured in India at Bajaj's Chakan plant. Now, it was originally planned to develop a 500 twin, apparently, but Pierer said in his interview, the 500 class is for me not an interesting category anymore, so we stopped the RC490 because we're bringing the 790 down a bit. We're talking about a 690 or 650, and that's better for marketing purposes because more is always better than less. Well, I'm not convinced about that. Sometimes less definitely is better than more, but it may have something to do with the possibly unexpected success of the Royal Enfield 650 twins. A new KTM 650 or 690 would be competing head-on with those particular bikes. Now, the first model is expected to be a naked, probably to be called a Duke, to be launched in India by 2026, and it's fully expected a fully fared RC and adventure model will follow. It's said the new range will be exported to countries like Nepal, Sri Lanka and Indonesia. I wouldn't entirely rule out the range coming to Europe. There is a bit of a hole in the middle of KTM's range. And it was confirmed that Bajaj is now also manufacturing Husqvarna motorcycles, which is interesting. Right, okay, so talking of the Royal Enfield, of course, the 650 Twins have actually received some fairly significant updates for 2023, including what for me is something I would say is crucial on a bike, and that is cast alloy wheels which can be fitted with tubeless tyres. Now, I'm aware that many riders do like spoked wheels for that classic look, but what I have said for years and years is that doesn't mean that riders should have to put up with classic tubed tyres and classic blowouts. I had enough of those when I was riding 40 odd years ago. The CX 500, it came out in 1979, was the first bike that came with tubeless tyres as standard. That was 50 years ago, well 45 years ago, and there's absolutely no reason, in my opinion, that modern bikes should still run on tubed tyres. Just not a safe feature, in my opinion. You can have spoked wheels which are tubeless fitment. There are plenty of those around. Oddly enough, you find them more on Chinese bikes than you do on anything else, which is really bizarre. Anyway, whatever. So the bikes, I think, are quite pretty looking. They get new paint schemes, they get some revised switchgear apparently, they get an LED headlight, and they also now come with a USB charging port as standard, and that particular colour scheme there also comes with blacked out exhausts, and I think that is a rather cool looking bike, though I say it myself. I wouldn't mind one of those personally. Let me know what you think about that particular bike. Kevin says he'll have to catch up with the rest of the show later because he's off to do some tasks. Good luck with that, Kevin. Right, okay, so moving on from the Royal Enfield there. BMW is reported to be working on expanding its EV portfolio by reworking the drive chain of the CE04 electric scooter to develop an electric motorcycle, and this is revealed through patent images which have appeared online. They've been reported in a number of different places on the internet, and what they appear to show here is the motor and the battery of the scooter fitted into the frame of a bike, which has actually been identified as coming from the BMW G310R. Now, the electric motor is placed behind the battery. It's almost vertical. It points downwards, and interestingly, it connects with a bevel drive to a shaft across the frame, which drives the sprocket, which turns the rear wheel via a belt. So what they can do with that is they can actually change the ratio of the motor to the rear wheel, which you can't do if you've got direct drive, I guess. But anyway, presumably the reason for adopting the CE04 powertrain is to try to reduce development time and probably to keep costs down too, because the parts will be uniform even if they're mounted differently. But whether the machine ever appears or not, I don't know, but it's almost certain to be considerably more expensive than the ICE 310. Now, in the CE04 there is an 8.9 kilowatt hour battery, so not an enormous one. Gives the machine a claimed maximum range of 130 kilometers, which is about 80 miles on the city riding centre. Obviously, range drops significantly if you open the thing up and start to use the 42 horsepower that the motor can actually develop to push you to a top speed of around 120 kph. Right, Terry's looked in. Good morning. Snow on the what's that on the line at Little Bromley-on-Sea? Oh, I see. That's a joke, right? Sometimes you baffle me with your humour, Terry. Right. Anyway, good to see you. Snow or no snow. Right. So, another news item about a product at the moment, and this is about Knox, the protective clothing manufacturer, and they appear to be banking on another hot summer in the UK, which looking out the window at the moment as we reach the end of March, I think they're certainly out of luck this spring. It's anything but warm and sunny this particular spring, but what they are looking at is a Knox Urbane Pro Mark III jacket for women and children, and this is men and women. This is actually what it looks like. The garment is described as the most versatile core garment for any rider, no matter what motorcycle they ride. Now, the key point is that this is not only a lightweight shirt, but it is breathable, which means obviously you can wear it in hot weather, but it's designed as an impact and abrasion resistant garment too. Now, its unique feature is that it's designed to be worn on its own in hot weather without needing a protective jacket over the top. I noticed there are two thumb straps there to help stop the sleeves riding up if you do fall off. It says worn close to the body. The thinner, lighter and more flexible level 2 micro lock compact armour in the back, shoulders and elbows stays in place and it won't move around, but I don't see a zip for attaching it to trousers. Now, the Mark III has actually gained its approval as a standalone Class AA garment, meaning you don't need an outer shell over the top of it unless you really want to wear one. Now, personally, I'd still be looking for the extra protection from a AAA rated garment for fast road riding, but I'd say it's probably adequate for urban and lower speed, sort of bimbling around country lanes that I do sometimes in the summer when I'm just out to enjoy the ride. But of course, there's nothing to stop you wearing it as an undergarment, and it's worth noting that one of the results from Chris Hurren's lab, which I'll be talking about next time out, is that doubling up on layers offers far more than double the slide time when you are travelling down the road on your backside. It would be a useful addition, I guess, therefore, to wear under many of the textile jackets, which are tending to fall rather short on the motor cap abrasion tests. More on that next time too. Something I did pull out of the motor cap data is that the only jackets to get a 5-star rating for safety are leathers, and of the 32 that get a 4-star at the moment, just one is textile. So yeah, you could, if you've got an existing jacket, you could double up. Now, the Urbane shirt here is £250, but frankly, if you already have spent quite a lot of money on a textile jacket and you want the additional protection, there's nothing to stop you popping this on underneath, and that will almost certainly be a big upgrade to the abrasion resistance. Not sure if they do anything similar for your legs, so I guess they're relying on denim jeans. Right, the earlier Mark II, incidentally, which also has a AA rating, is still available in limited sizes, and it's available from Knox for £184, so quite a saving over the Mark III. Right, okay, so Terry says channeling his inner Reggie Perrin. Yeah, I'd forgotten all about Reggie. Probably a good thing too, actually. But hey ho. Right, so round to the final point today, and this is back to the ICE ban and the EU backtrack, which would allow e-fuels. Now, as I said, it seems like the compromise has been reached in record time, and not too surprisingly, I guess, there's a backlash from green groups, but less expectedly, a non-profit group of 47 businesses, which includes car makers Ford and Volvo, are also unhappy with this change of heart, because they say the industry has already invested heavily in electric vehicles, and sort of changing the rules at this late stage to allow e-fuels to be used in ICE motors actually undermines the efforts that companies are making to move to an all-electric future. Now, for example, Ford have said the ongoing debate only creates uncertainty amongst consumers and is distracting from our joint efforts to tackle the climate crisis. So what's the line in the UK? Well, the DFT's official line remains that the UK will phase out the sale of new petrol and diesel cars and vans by 2030, and hybrids will be taken off sale by 2035. But there are reports that the UK may follow the EU, but only if the cars are, quote, zero tailpipe emission. Now, as I've explained previously, an ICE can be carbon neutral. In other words, the carbon that comes out the tailpipe in terms of carbon dioxide is the no more than the carbon that has been burnt in or put into the fuel in the first place, because you extract the CO2 to create the fuel, and so it becomes a cycle. But if you burn anything in air, even paper or wood, you produce nitrous oxides. And right now I don't believe there's any technology that completely cleans up NOx emissions from vehicles. You can get them low, you can get them down. That's what catalytic converters do in your engine. But emissions tests on e-fuels show, not surprisingly, similar levels of NOx fumes as standard E10 petrol. Now, a Department of Transport spokesperson was reported to have said, we don't have an exact position on e-fuels at the moment. If the industry can prove they're zero emission, then they're fine. But he then added this strange quote: the infrastructure is not necessarily there at the moment. That's why the current default is electric vehicles. But here in the UK, there is a company called Zero Petroleum. They are promising to produce carbon neutral synthetic fuel by 2027. And of course, since e-fuels can be delivered via a conventional pump at a petrol station, I'm fascinated to know why the DFT seems to think there is an infrastructure problem when it's pretty obvious that if the uptake of electric vehicles continues at the current rate, it's going to be the means to charge them which is going to be the issue. Anyway, the German position has no doubt been prompted by pressure from car manufacturers such as Porsche. They're one of several brands pushing the development of e-fuels, and they have invested a lot of money, over £61 million apparently, on a production plant in Chile. Now, synthetic fuel is manufactured, as I've said, using captured carbon dioxide or possibly carbon monoxide. Seems a bit unlikely. Carbon monoxide doesn't float around in the atmosphere particularly, but they bring in carbon dioxide. You obtain hydrogen from something like seawater by using a sustainable electrical source, wind, solar, nuclear power, for example. You then burn the fuel. You only release the amount of CO2 that you took out. That's how it's carbon neutral. But the problem is, critics say this process is inefficient because you could have used that electricity directly to power things, but you now have to go through another process. And they say that the resulting e-fuel will be incredibly expensive. And the big problem really is that making the production levels suitable to deal with the cars that we would have on the road. Now, a new study published by the Potsdam Institute for Climate Research, I haven't done any background checks on them, see if they have any particular posture on climate research. Many of the apparently independent sounding bodies are actually pushing one angle or another, but they say that all planned e-fuel projects worldwide would only produce enough fuel to cover 10% of Germany's demand for e-fuel use in aviation, shipping and chemicals in the next few years. So that's everything in the world would actually power 10% of Germany's demand. So what about all the other countries? Now, supporters of e-fuels argue it's just a case of building enough solar-powered plants. For example, Jamie Turner, who is a professor of mechanical engineering at the King Abdullah University of Science and Technology, he says that solar panels covering, quote, less than 1% of the Sahara Desert would provide energy to synthesize e-fuel enough to cover all Europe's transport needs. Now, it doesn't sound much, does it, 1% of the Sahara Desert, until you start thinking, how big's the Sahara Desert? And the answer is that it covers 9 million square kilometres. So to cover 1% of the Sahara, you'd actually need to cover 90,000 square kilometres with solar panels. And that just happens to be an area the size of Portugal. So that gives you an idea of the scale. It's very easy to sort of say less than 1%, and it sounds very impressive, but you need to put that, you need to reference it to what you're actually talking about. So yeah, you need to cover the entire Portuguese countryside with solar panels, presumably everywhere that you currently grow crops and live and drive on, before you could cover Europe's energy needs. So, and the other point, of course, is try finding a politically stable country in the Sahara. So, right, okay. Terry has said There's a company in New Zealand with a high-tech zero-emission steam engine. Fancy a motorcycle with a steam engine. It has been done. In fact, I saw a video of one chugging along the road quite recently. Right, okay, so that is it for today. So we've got that picture of that shirt up, but hey-ho, never mind. Thank you very much again for looking in. I will try to get the MotoCap Chris Hurren lab visit in on Sunday. I'll probably do a fairly extended talk about what I saw and my chat, what I learned from chatting with Associate Professor Chris Hurren at Deakin University, and I'll do that on Sunday, all things being equal. Well, hopefully everything's gone well today's show after the glitches last week. So don't forget, once again, the presentation, the live online talk series on rider psychology, pre-performance preparation, that's going out on Wednesday. Do pop over, follow the link on the preamble, and if you possibly can come over and watch that, that'd be jolly nice of you. I'll just put the link up here for you before I go, and hopefully see you on Sunday. So if you are out there on the bikes today, do make sure that you stay shiny side up.